Nigeria's power sector is a key component of the Nigeria's economy. Now, however, it is grappling with challenges as it navigates 2025. From power shortages to outdated infrastructure and inability to meet increasing energy demands, the sector's inefficiencies continue to hinder economic growth. Now, with daily power outages, especially in rural areas, and frequent grid collapses, businesses and households face deepening frustrations. Government actions such as strategic investments in renewables and infrastructure improvements are expected to pave the way for more reliable, sustainable power future. The push for renewable energy, which includes solar and hydropower, represents power shift towards diversification. This will potentially reduce the nation's dependency on fossil fuels and addressing environmental concerns. My guest is Noelle Okwedy. She's a consultant with Next Year Power. She joins me via Zoom for this conversation. Noelle, it's good to see you. How are you today?
It's good to see you too. I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Well, it's a rainy day here in Lagos. You would agree with me. I don't know if you have power in your place, electricity. How has it been? And tell me, what's it been like? Band A, Band B, or what band are you? How have you been coping? What's your assessment of the power sector after this change that we saw sometime last year?
Yes, thanks to Lope. I think that for most Nigerians, most people might see that there hasn't really been a change because while we now have tariff bands where band A customers are paying over 200 naira per kilowatt hour and the other bands are paying lower prices because of things like grid instability, vandalism and other issues. Band A customers aren't actually getting as many hours as they should, which is 20 hours per day. And for other customers as well, when you have a grid collapse or a grid imbalance, it means that you can't get the guaranteed hours of service that you're entitled to. So from the perspective of Nigerians, most people might say that things haven't really improved, even though some people might have more electricity than before, but it's still not optimal.
Now, let's move forward with that challenge, grid collapse and all that we've seen in recent times. What do you make of it? What really is the challenge? Some say the situation of that grid is really not sustainable, that it cannot take it cannot take what it used to, or how do I put it? It doesn't have the capacity to accommodate us as Nigerians. 5,000 to 6,000 megawatts is what we've been generating for some time. Not even up to 6,000. I don't think we've got to 6,000. Now, what can we do? What are the options? What options do we have to address this lapses? That, it's now becoming a back-to-back thing, grid collapse today, grid collapse tomorrow.
Yeah, so there's clearly an infrastructure deficit in the power sector where the level of infrastructure available isn't commensurate to the amount of power that the grid should be carrying or should be supplying. So like you said, the maximum amount of power that has been distributed by the grid isn't even up to 6,000 megawatts, even though we have a generation capacity of over 12,000 megawatts. So there's a huge deficit because between transmission and distribution, the infrastructure isn't enough. And then there's also the commercial aspect, which is a huge part of it. Yeah. Because if companies aren't making money to pay the rest of the power sector, then it means that these companies can't invest in the infrastructure as well. I think it was last month when we heard that the gas companies were saying that they were going to shut down gas supply to generation companies because of outstanding debts. And these debts have kept piling. So until we get to a place where the power sector is able to generate revenue and pay its bills and also invest in infrastructure, then that's when we can start seeing improvements in the level of quality of service.
Do we have options with renewables? We've been hearing about solar and all of that. We have sun in some part of this country. Excuse me. And some would say we could take advantage of solar energy, wind energy, coal-powered plants and all of that. What do you make around that space? Are we exploring these opportunities?
Yes, I'll say that to an extent, we are exploring those opportunities, especially for rural electrification. So while Nigeria, I think I think the statistic is that just over 50% of Nigerians have electricity access, but most of those people that don't have access live in rural areas. And that's where things like mini grids, solar mini grids come in. And there's been some movement there where we're seeing the Rural Electrification Agency partnering with organizations like the AFDB and World Bank to extend mini grids to these areas. So we have people in rural communities who never had power supply now being able to get power supply thanks to solar and other technologies. But then there's also, on the other hand, like households now investing in solar inverters, solar powered appliances, again, because of high electricity tariffs and high fuel prices, and then also commercial and industrial customers buying into solar panels, solar rooftop, or solar as a service, where they are getting services from companies like Daystar, Starsites that are providing power as a service to them or solar as a service. So these are improvements that are happening, but we're not seeing it happen at the grid level yet. And again, it's because of the infrastructure deficit. So you have a grid that can't even take more than 6,000, up to 6,000 megawatts. And you now want to include variable sources of electricity like solar and other renewable energy sources. So basically, if you want to get more variable sources or more renewable sources on the grid, we need those infrastructure developments that I've been talking about. And until we have that, we'll keep seeing scattered development in terms of renewables. So like customers here and there buying into renewables off grid, but we're not seeing that movement on grid.
A great one. But we're also looking away from, let's look at efforts by government now. Support is being coming. We've seen supports from international agencies trying to support government one way or the other to improve Nigeria's electricity sector. But the discourse will always come up with that issue of cost-reflective tariff, which took us to the Band A, Band B, and Band C thing. But my question to you really would be, this level of stability that we have in some of these bands. Some Band A customers will tell you, oh, we are doing pretty well. Some Band B customers say, oh, we're also doing pretty well. But how do we balance it moving forward so that even those on Band E, Band C, or what band that have 3, 4, 5 hours a day, some don't even get supply at all at the moment. Now, how can we balance that? That is one. Then what also is the role of the Rural Electrification Agency in all of this? The rural areas, some have not had power for years. So what can they also do with regard? Because I know this grid cannot supply electricity to all of these rural areas, some of these rural areas.
Yeah. So I'll start with your first question. So as much as we are saying that tariffs are cost reflective, only Band A tariffs are actually cost reflective. Band B to E are still paying prices that are lower than the market price. Yeah. And that's something that a lot of people are ignoring. And I know that earlier in the year, there was news that tariffs were going to go up for even those bands as well. And it's not just for the GISCOs, right? Even the GENCOs, TCN, all the companies in the power sector, the gas companies as well, they need cost-reflective tariffs because they need to make back the money that they've invested in the sector. So that's one thing. And then so essentially what I'm saying is that tariffs are not yet cost reflective. So we aren't even seeing the dividends of cost reflective tariffs because that doesn't really exist on a large scale yet. And
even
then
in terms
of the REA, even at the moment, so Band A tariffs are over 200 naira, but Band B, C, D, E are paying between 30 and 60 naira per kilowatt hour. So there's that huge discrepancy. And that's largely below the market price that they should be paying. And in the coming months, we expect that tariffs should even go up for those bands if we want everyone to be on cost-reflective tariffs. So that's one issue that is still under the radar for now. But then in terms of the REA, they are doing a lot. So like I mentioned, there are mini grids being deployed to rural communities, but beyond that, even to primary healthcare centers, schools, universities. The REA has certain programs that they've been deploying mini grids, hybrid and solar mini grids to these institutions and communities, and they're actually making a difference for electrification for people that have never even had electricity in Nigeria.
Well, that's also. Let's look at energy transition and what's been happening in the Donald Trump tariff issues, what's happening to the oil market, and of course the energy market. What are you learning with regards to all of this, Noelle?
Yeah, so I think you mentioned when you were reading out the news that oil prices have declined. So between January 15th today, oil prices have declined from about $82 per barrel to $65 per barrel. That's a significant drop. So it's not just even the tariffs. Obviously, the tariffs are causing uncertainty because there's fears of a recession, which will reduce demand and also reduce oil prices. So which are reducing oil prices, the fears of recession. But there's also the sanctions on Iran because the US and Iran are currently negotiating, and it's not clear where that will go. So there's also uncertainty from that. But then there's also OPEC, and there's a lot of uncertainty within OPEC as well, within their relations, because they voted to increase oil supply in May. And this is coming at a time when there are fears of demand declining. So all these issues together are causing a contraction in oil prices because investors are obviously uncertain about what's going to happen next.
If that happens, I'm worried about Nigeria. Our budget of about 55 trillion naira. And now, if anything happens to the price of crude, and we are not ramping up production, that might affect our projections, revenue projections.
Definitely. It definitely will affect our revenue projections. So Nigeria's oil production has peaked. Nigeria's oil production peaked in January. Between January and now, crude oil production, excluding condensates, has declined from, I think, 1.5 to about 1.4, and it's been declining from January, February, and March. Not significantly, but there's still that notable drop. And due to issues like the explosion in River State affecting oil infrastructure and other issues as well. And then you combine this with lower oil prices, that obviously results in a reduction in crude oil revenue, government revenue, export revenue as well. But I think you should also look at the bright side for consumers, minus the fact that obviously it affects government revenue. For consumers, it means lower petrol prices, lower diesel prices, which I think most people will probably welcome.
So if Trump goes ahead with his baby drill, and they continue to drill, and there's so much oil coming in from that end, do you see it further affecting the price of crude moving forward? And of course, oil producing countries like Nigeria, Angola, and all of that, what do we do? What can we do to help ourselves?
Yes, so that's a tricky question because the thing with Trump's presidency is that there's lots of uncertainty. So even I can't say what he's going to do tomorrow, and that's something that spooks investors.
I agree with you.
You don't know what to expect. You don't know how to plan either. So even if there's an increase in oil supply, if demand is declining because of tariff wars and there's a recession, then there's going to be a supply glut and oil prices will go down. So the thing to watch out for with oil prices or with the oil market is the balance between demand and supply. A drop in demand obviously causes a drop in price. An increase in demand and an increase in supply could cause an increase in price or a decrease in price. It's about the balance of the scales. So Trump saying drill, baby, drill is one thing, but then what's happening on the demand side, I think putting those two together will help people plan. But at the same time, like I said, we don't know what he's going to do next. And that's the fear for investors and for countries like Nigeria and Angola.
Finally, before I let you go, Noelle, let's come back to our energy crisis, say energy challenge that we have in this part of the world. Moving on in 2025, what would you suggest? What do you think? What sort of handshake, what sort of partnership would you be expecting from maybe government, private sector players, international agencies and all moving forward to at least, improve what we have. The gas guys are there, they want to make their money. The discos are there, they want to also make their money. Just the transmission end is still being partly controlled by government. And many say it should be privatized. Well, that's open for argument. So if you look at all of this, which is the weakest link? What needs to be done?
Yeah, so I think what the government needs to focus on is creating an enabling environment, which is obviously the what the government can do in cases like this to help the private sector thrive. So for instance, in the power sector, it means cost-reflective tariffs. In the gas sector, it means removing the bottlenecks of gas price caps on domestic gas, also the indebtedness between the power sector and the gas producers. So there's all these issues, and also the pending subsidies. I know that there were subsidies between the government and the power sector, but those subsidies are largely unpaid, and that's also affecting the gas suppliers. So removing these bottlenecks is key to unlocking all these removing these bottlenecks is key to unlocking supply, and also just making the environment one that businesses can thrive in. Because but we know that uncertainty is not good for business. So there's also this example of a policy that was announced or that is being played around with, I don't know, in the government about banning solar panel imports. I'm not sure where that is going, but that's an example of a policy that will not serve businesses in Nigeria because we're not at the level where we're manufacturing yet. So banning solar panel imports just means reducing solar uptake in Nigeria. So these are the things that the government needs to look at. How can policy enable the private sector rather than stifling the private sector?
Interesting chat as always. Noelle Okwedy is a consultant with Nextel Power. Thank you so much. Would have loved to have you here in the studio, but all the same, see you soon.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Interesting chat as always. Noelle Okwedy is a consultant with Nextel Power. Yes, we will take a break, but when we come back, we will take our conversation to look at Nigeria's reputation management and national development. I have Mr. Yomi Badejo Okusonya. He's the chairman board of the Nigerian Reputation Management Group. He's a fellow, the NIPR. He's live in the studio. After this break, don't miss that conversation. We're right back.